Well, the U.S. military is keeping up its deadly campaign against alleged drug boats. U.S. Southern Command released this new video late last night, saying it targeted a, quote, low-profile vessel in the eastern Pacific Ocean, killing one person on board. In all, the U.S. military has destroyed at least 30 boats, resulting in 105 reported deaths. The Trump administration says the campaign, known as Operation Southern Spear, is aimed at curtailing drug trafficking. The strikes are also part of an increased military presence near South America as Trump ramps up a pressure campaign on Venezuela. And in recent days, the U.S. has seized 2 oil tankers right off that nation's coast, and President Trump says it's pursuing a third one. The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz, defended the actions today.
The reality of the situation is that sanctioned oil tankers operate as the primary economic lifeline for Maduro and his illegitimate regime. These sanctioned tankers also fund the narco-terrorist group Cartel de los Soles. And one has to ask, why have sanctions, either bilaterally, unilaterally, or backed by the international community, if they're not enforced? Well, the United States under President Trump is enforcing them in international waters. Otherwise, they are just empty words.
My source tonight is Democratic Congressman Adam Smith, the ranking member of the Armed Services Committee. Hi, Congressman. Nice to see you. So what do you make of the UN ambassador there arguing the U.S. is rightfully enforcing sanctions to deprive Maduro and drug cartels of its resources?
Well, the important thing to remember here is the focus of the Trump administration is to do regime change in Venezuela, to drive Maduro out of power. So that should be the conversation. Is that a legitimate effort on behalf of the United States? First, that's the biggest point about this, because there are sanctioned oil tankers and sanctioned vessels with all manner of different cargo all over the world. The U.S. isn't choosing to board them. So the focus isn't really enforcing sanctions. It's really focused on the broader campaign that the Trump administration is driving against Venezuela to basically do regime change and start a war with Venezuela. And that's what we ought to be questioning and examining. Is that a good policy for the U.S.? And same thing with the drug interdictions. Blowing up a few dozen boats with cocaine on them in Latin America is not going to significantly impact the drug problem in the U.S. And again, that's not what it's about. It's about trying to drive Maduro from power.
Why would the administration want to drive Maduro from power by going this route, in your view?
Yeah, well, in my view, it really stems from Trump's national security strategy and his talk about how the U.S. should have the right to dominate the Western Hemisphere in a sort of very 19th century Monroe Doctrine way of looking at the world. You will note that he recently, weirdly, appointed the governor of Louisiana, of all people, to be the special envoy to Greenland. And the initial announcement was, "Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to go take Greenland for the U.S." He is challenging the sovereignty of a variety of different countries. He's threatened to annex Canada, invade Panama, to seize control of the Panama Canal. Basically, he's blowing apart 80 years worth of effort to try to create a rules-based international order, which admittedly has not been perfect. No system ever is perfect, but there was an idea that sovereignty would be respected, and we're going to move away from the world that led to World War I and World War II, which basically said powerful nations are free to dominate their region as they see fit, not based on the rule of law. Well, Trump wants to blow that up. He wants the power. He wants to control the Western Hemisphere. Maduro, and also to some degree Petro in Colombia, president of Colombia, they don't support Trump. So they got to go. We have to get people who are going to be compliant with Trump's worldview. That's the way it looks to me.
Have your efforts to get answers from the administration on the strikes done anything to either check or curtail the administration?
Well, I think one thing has happened. The administration has decided to at least give some information to Congress, which they didn't do at the start of this. They decided to do this in the end of July. The first strike happened on September 2nd. Congress learned about it with the rest of the world when the boat blew up on September 2nd. Since then, they have done some briefings for Congress. They have not yet provided us the information they're supposed to provide us with. The execute order that was issued in August that told the Department of Defense how to carry this out By law, they're supposed to give it to us. They haven't. So that has improved. But the basic legality of this effort, they have not established that. Now, they draw a lot of analogies to some of the strikes that we did against al-Qaeda and ISIS in Iraq and Afghanistan and Somalia, elsewhere. All of that was done pursuant to congressional authorization. There is no congressional authorization for what they are doing, and there is no imminent threat as that term is defined. So they are acting illegally. They are blowing up boats and killing people in Latin America without the legal authority to do so. And for all the pressure we've put on them, Republicans in Congress have refused to try and make them stop.
And the administration is arguing that these are drug terrorists who are enemy combatants, and they're trying to traffic drugs into the U.S. to kill people. That is what the administration has argued. But you brought up September 2nd quickly. Are we any closer to seeing that video of the second strike? I know you've seen it. Secretary Hegseth had indicated he didn't want it to be public, even though DOJ has released other videos of the strikes. What do you know about that?
Yeah, he doesn't want it to be public because it looks bad for him. And a lot of what he and other Republicans have said about what's on that video is simply not the truth. It is not an accurate description of what you see in that second strike after the boat has been destroyed and capsized, and you have two survivors clinging to the overturned bow of that boat. They've described it in ways that simply are inaccurate. So Secretary Hegseth doesn't want to release it because it's going to show that he hasn't been honest and he's not telling the truth. They've released, I think, 25, 30 different videos now. Clearly, they can edit these things in such a way that there is no classified sensitive information released. They don't want to release it because it undermines their argument.
Congressman Adam Smith, thank you so much. We'll be right back.